Hey people, try not to be drinking anything you don't want coming back through your nose here. I break down the writings in the ancient language to see what they're trying to hide from us. If you haven't seen me, you can download a letter meaning chart about anywhere. They all read about the same. Look at the ones with the pictures and get a better idea what the language is about. So this one goes out to Andrea, who funded a third of my motherboard, and to Gary, who can't seem to get my name right, for turning me on to this Guttenberg Bible. So I found a copy of it on the Vatican Archives website, and if I had 20 million, I think I'd buy me one. It's the best book I ever read. So Wiki says it's the first major book mass produced, assumed around 1455. So this Johannes Guttenberg says it was the work of the butcher, and they interpret that as the work of the books, but it doesn't look like that. It looks to be that he had many other books that he butchered up. It doesn't read exactly like the Hebrew Bible. It starts with this amusing story on how it come about and has many colored alchemy photos in it. So in 1455, the future Pope had seen a sample of it, and he gave it the thumbs up. He said it was easy to read. And that was before he realized that there was going to be another book mass produced to teach everybody how to learn to read the ancient language. So it's said to be of the Vulgate. It contains a Latin version of the Old Hebrew Testament, and that's because it uses words like nut liquor, goat liquor. So Guttenberg says that he owes it all to Jerome. 380 AD says he's the one that broke down all the books and did most of the work. So Jerome was said to live in a cave outside the city, and being there was no J then, he spelled his name with a X-E-R-O omega M. The plant life first to see the all from. That omega means all. They kind of changed the meaning of that. And you could see there in the Greek it was exophronios, the X omega that come after the ranios, the come after the first to see the cycles, to make os, to see the secrets. So I like to start everything with the first page. It gives me an idea of the language that's in there, and it's easy to see that there's 12 characters around the outside, and there's one woman, so we know that's Virgo or Isis or Mary. So don't try to break this down in your German dictionary. It's not. That's all part of the language change. This is an ancient Welsh English language, the same language that was around the world. It come off the boat people, and it starts out to say that the die. The D is the door, through. The I is the work, through the works of the bosun, the wager. He got the job of dividing the papers. Maybe it was a bet. Maybe he had a wager with the captain that if he could figure this out, he'd get a week in Singapore. So it says, die bosun, the wager, the work of the bosun. Through the first wager, the shit, to divide the shit. That shit is the first word in Genesis, barashit. It means to consume the work seals. Barashit, in the beginning, learn to consume the work seals. And they don't want you learning to consume the work seals, so they just left that out. That wasn't gades into begotten spricket. If you can't understand that, just go watch all the Pirates of the Caribbean movies, and you ought to be able to read all this. But It's got several meanings in it. There's layers. It was a master alchemist that wrote this book, and it's got several layers, and we read this layer off the top, but if you break down all that letter, and there's a couple more layers that you see in there, I see at least 3, and there's no telling how many more. But that wasn't Gades in the begotten spricket. So the rest of the book was given, and the spricket to consume the pre-given writings. So it kind of looks like some pirates invaded and took some books that they weren't supposed to have and didn't quite know how to read them. And the bosun got a wager with the captain to, he said, I could figure that out. And that was his job. And I know this because I found it in a later book too. Wasn't Gades in the begotten spricket, the ouse, the knowledge bind of Johannes, in the cycles to divide the SS, the Solomon seals, the capital, to give the pictures, to make tell. The tell is it's the same as when you're playing poker. Somebody's got a tell. It's something that's talking when their mouth's closed. If you're out there in the desert and you see something tall out there that just doesn't belong, that's a tell. It's telling you somebody's got some water stashed close by. There's tells all over the planet. You'll see things that just don't look like they belong, and it's trying to tell us something. The capital. So this knowledge bind of Johannes, it's spelt the same as all the Johns in all the old books, and it's a J omega, and it means to make all the divided cycles, to make all the divided annuals. And these are all these ancient books are all about the annuals. They're all the Chaldean, the divided annuals. Capital es Christo den Ioden, the tell, to consume the Christo den Ioden. The Christo, the divided stories of the SST, the Solomon seals, the seals to see through the cycles. Ioden, the works of Odin. So them Odins, the odes, that's the songs to give the seed, and the song, it still doesn't tell you anything. It just gives you the code number. You still have to have the picture to look up the code number. So that bosun, that's the house of the sun, but or the house to see the sun, but you can see it's spelt with a Z in there. And so that sun there is the tools of the cycles, the house to see the tools of the cycles. And that would be the chart room on the boat. So that story goes on for another page and a half, and when you get to the end of it, you can see where he must have finished, because he finishes it with an amen. And it says that Jesu Christi, to drinking that die got like, and to see the shit from the cycles. So after that, it'll go on talking about the books, and it'll start telling about what's in the books. You see it says in the beginning, the book of this Olden Testamentes, that book of der goat liker Christian, die Bible. And that's a common thing, this goat liquor and nut liquor. It was common in the ancient time with the Israelites. And you can see that here in Numbers 22:4, that you shall lick up the company and all that's around you, and lick up us and as the ox in the grass. And that kind of gives you an idea when this was written. You know that Taurus was ruling at that time. We can see at the beginning of that book that what it was talking about, and it's the name of the book. They try to make it out as the name of the person that wrote it, but the person's name is always happens to be what the book is about. And it was a book of Jesu ben Israel, and his father was Jesus, and his son was Jesus too. So it's really talking about the orbit of the moon, and I believe it's a book of algebra too. And you can look down here at this word for Jordan. They got it spelled out. It looks just like the French saying in the garden, le garden. And when you break the word down, it says to bind, to make first through seed. It sure likes like that would be the word for garden. Our language hasn't changed that much. It hasn't been that long since the language changed. So I haven't read all this yet, but I'm pretty sure that this is about bio-farming, about gardening by the moon. I was reading on down through the list of books, and I recognized Zacharias, and I noticed Haggai had a different spelling above it, and that US at the end means time. That's the connected serpents of time, and it looks like the book says the ages of time. So it says the ages is that tend in the spricket Vader, and that word you think is tenth is really the TI, the numbers, and the end cycle of the numbers. This will be 1 through 9, and then comes 10, and that's where your word 10 come from. And then you remember the spricket. That's to consume the first work given seals. So some of the seals were given and some of them were taken. And then you see Vader there, and that means the connected through the beginning of Vader has been there since the beginning. And so an invader is almost the same thing. It doesn't necessarily mean invade. It means that the cycles of the Vader. The spricket Vader, Vader compassed, and through the first fold to see from the past, to see from the pictures to consume the seals. Through the secrets Odes Chen Vokes, and I imagine they've got some old stories. The Volks got some old stories, some old songs that have the secrets to break down in there. And Vander Wiederbowing, and that bowing is the same word we use today. It's a bowing, a house to see connected wings, and that was the house of Isis, the house with the wings. Same house with wings we have today, the bowing. Through the secret temples to Jerusalem. And if you go to Jerusalem and you look at the old temples, you'll see the house of wings. You'll see Isis still there. Invader to compassed X pi, 10 pi, 31 from. Through the connected bind of the ISH. And that's what we've been looking at, the IHS. We've been reading that wrong all along. That's the IS divided. That was the ones who brought the 31-day calendar. Envasaner, in the connected fire cycles to begin. The pasty, the pictures to consume the numbers. The sun's first seal to consume the numbers from. And chest, he ka, and the cycles through to divide Solomon's seals, to divide the ka, or to divide Solomon's seals, to divide the fold. So if we go to the book of Haggai, or the ages, it says, starts with the bosun's writings, to consume the seals, to make from the bind of the Druze, the bind of the Druids, the milk from the binds to give in the shade of Isis, the shades of green, to make connect from shod, to bind the shades into work life in the calendar, the DBR, to make the connected life and to work through to divide the footwork, to divide the writings of the foot that were cut off. So in order to raise his Bible sales, he figured he would print a book to teach everybody how to read it. And it was called A Simple Children's Book, and it was in all the schools, and it was mass produced. Everybody had it, and it was just in the first language, and they come back and they butchered the books up and added this other language to it in order to dumb people down, because they didn't want them to learn the language. And when you look at this, it says the master and the boy on the left, but everything on the left is in order to unteach you the language that you were learning, because the magister is actually the little girl there, and the peer, the power, the payer, the father is on the right there. And they totally tried to change the language. And you look underneath there, it says the Veni, that's the little girl, Venus. The power, the poor, the payer, the father, and the disc of Saphir, the disc of Sophia. That's the moon up above them. They're not out there in the daylight. This is at night. And they're written right in the same order. So this quid here is most ancient. It means to come after the connected works for. It's the last thing you learn in the fourth key of Solomon. It's impossible to find. I found one glimpse of it and surely can't find the writings to go with it. But all our language today was destroyed because of this. And it's the reason that all of our stars have the same names as all the plants, all the animals. They all have a star named after them. So I don't study any magic. It's all just as dumb as every other religion because they've changed all the language. But this is all about astrology. And the God is the connection that we have to the stars, and the magic is knowing the connection and using the power. So it was something in that Guttenberg Bible in the description of the book of Amos that had me go searching for this. And it's a good book. Ignore all the English. Use it to find the numbers that you can't find. You have to pull up many books. They're all butchered up. Some of them have the wrong pictures. Some of them have a lot of the words cut off. But it's going to give you some knowledge. And just ignore all that on the English side. And what you're going to learn is the Adamus, the primus homo. And you study all those words before. You'll have to go through this book many, many times. And it'll tell you the beginning and the end. And so this US at the end of Adamus, that's time. And the same thing on this primus, that's time, the first in time, the first from time, the Adamus. You'll see on this picture, the one's not over here in the front. The one sits way back there on the right by the trees, by the light sitting over there, and that's the Adamus, the knowledge through the waters of time, the primus, to open the first works from time, and the homo, that's a omo, that means to see from, the formatus, the US on him, the form of time to learn the secret seals, the knowledge through to see, the knowledge through the imaginum, and the secrets connected to learn from the sexta, the die creations. So that esta ideo, that's the seal on page 2, and we pull that up here. And that sexta, that means the secrets of the plant seals through to make the creations. And that gelba terra, or the gleba terra, that has two meanings for gleba. It could be green, but it's also the skin on a mushroom of the earth. So this is the picture on page 2, the deuce. And the book was created with the language. And if you study that with an ancient picture of Shem Hamfarash, you'll be able to figure that out. And you see there's pictures of animals there. And ignore the English, that's all a lie. And you'll see here that this cornix is the cornicator. He's the cater on the corn. He's a corn eater. Doesn't say anything about the crow crieth. The corn, it means to give to see the first seed, and that the cornix, he's going to be the, if you're hungry, you wake up early in the morning and watch which direction the crow's flying, and he's going to lead you to where you can find the corn. So the crow is also Ra, he's the first, and all those gods in Egypt, they were all the birds. And the birds gave them the signs. And so the cornicator, the corn to make cater, to give the knowledge to see the seals to see first. And all the language is all tied together. All the astrology, all the earth's knowledge, the knowledge of life, everything, all the languages all tied together in one. The prefixes, what we call prefixes, come after the word in this language, and get the association with them and see which ones mean language, see the meanings of them, and you'll be able to start understanding the words better. So back here to Adam and Eve, you see on Eve, she's a prima, not a primus. And that's to open the first works from knowledge, the stories from knowledge of the Mueller. The Adamus wasn't a real good slave, and you could see that number 2. It sits over there between Adam and it's by that picture in the back where they were taking the DNA from the rib and genetically engineering the creature that was on this planet to make a better mule. You can see where the Adamus was a formatus and the Eva is a formata, formation of knowledge. It's the same story as the Enuma Elish, it sounds like. This is getting long, I'm going to have to shut it down, but I'll leave some links to these books underneath. And you see that red line there, it says, he seducti a diablo. The reason that red line's there is because the note says that the dia was added later. It was just the ablo. And in order to change the language, they had to add that di there. So there was no devil, just a vil. So this whole book actually teaches astrology. You'll see many lists on the pictures. There'll be 12. There's one of them that comes straight out and would tell you of the 12 months. The stars, they're all named after the stars of the month. You can look them up. And when you get to the end, it'll tell you how to put the astrology together to see when the end time comes. And you have to just forget what you've been taught when you look at the pictures. Just study the words and study the pictures, and forget all the lies you've been taught. And I got to go. Good day, folks. I'll try to get this up tonight and get you some links on it. God is love, God is light, God is knowledge.